Coming up on this week's Weird News, we have stories about being a goat, shoplifting, getting a haircut, and parking in a pond.
And now, it's time for this week's Weird News with Daniel Bryan.
Hello from this week's Weird News. It's nearly the middle of August, and here we are again with episode 24. Welcome along to today's show, and if you're new to us, this week's Weird News is a place to find weird and wonderful news from around the world, as well as some new up-and-coming musical artists. But before we get on with today's show, for anyone who missed last week's show, here's a summary of what you missed. On our last show, our first story was about a couple that got married. And shortly after the wedding, the husband saw his bride without makeup for the first time. And as a result, now he's suing her for physical suffering. Our second story was about a woman who drank so much Red Bull every single day that she's actually going blind. Our third story was about a man who moved to Barcelona as it was cheaper for him to live there and commute to his job in London than actually live in London. And our final story was about a cat and dog that meet up every day in the same place at the same time and go for a walk together. And on TWWN Music last week, we had an artist called Michael Bruner with his original song called Too Good. If any of this sounds interesting and you want to know a bit more about them, check out our last episode on our website at www.thisweeksweirdnews.com or download it from any of the podcast feeds. But now, onto today's show, where it's time for the weird and wonderful news over the last week that you may have missed. Our stories today come from week 33, 2015, or as some of you may prefer, the 10th to the 16th of August.
Story number 1.
Have you ever had one of those weeks where you just want to pack it all in and give up, and maybe go off to like a small island and just live in peace? Well, one man has kind of done that, but without the island, and he's not actually on his own. But he is fulfilling a passion, and also learning about another species of animals at the same time. Thomas Thwaites was so intrigued by goats that he gave up 3 days of his life to go and live with them as a goat, to find out more about them, and to take a holiday away from the pain and worry of being self-conscious. So what do you need to go and live with a load of goats? Well, I guess you could do on a budget, but Thomas didn't. He was fitted with prosthetic limbs to make it possible for him to move on all fours easily, and with reduced pain, and he was also fitted with a fake stomach, which means he could eat grass just like the other goats. Thomas is a conceptual designer, and is interested in how humans will use technology to fulfill their desires, and I guess his desire was to be with the goats. Life being a goat, however, was not as easy as you'd imagine. Thomas managed to keep up with the others for about a kilometre or so down the side of a rocky mountain before they all left him behind. I guess they were not as keen as he was as having an extra goat around. So what do you do next after spending 3 days with goats? Well, obviously, you go and write a book about it. His book is out now and it's called Goat Man: How I Took a Holiday from Being Human. So if you're stuck with a holiday reading this year, why not check it out and find out what the life of a goat is really like.
Story number 2.
A young lady was caught shoplifting this week, but it didn't quite go as you'd think. A video posted online shows a store manager watching CCTV screens in an office, before quickly jumping up and dashes out the door, shouting loudly for the other staff members to come quickly. They rush off down the stairs and out onto the shop floor to apprehend the individual. The manager grabs the young lady and she protests that she didn't do anything, to which he replies, "No, of course you didn't do anything." But this is where it changes. Suddenly, a band start playing a fanfare and a woman appears with cake and champagne.
Jij bent de 10.000ste winkeldief van dit pand. Jawel, pak vast. Kijk. Leuk, wat hebben we allemaal? Een muts.
The manager, still clutching the woman close to him, then puts a party hat on her head. So what's the celebration? Well, they're celebrating their 10,000th shoplifter. Obviously, the woman appears to be incredibly embarrassed and wishes the floor would swallow her up. So was that the point? Was the usual treatment of shoplifters not working as it should? Hence getting up to 10,000 people. I would say that this woman won't be doing it again anytime soon. Before long, the young woman breaks free and dashes out of the shop. In the process, sets the alarms off on the door and disappears. You can become part of this week's Weird News. This section of the show could be dedicated to you. Sponsor the show and we can fill this section with a tailor-made advert just for you. Reach your audience in a different way with the power of a podcast. We are open to your ideas, so get in touch at thisweeksweirdnews@gmail.com. Get on board with us now as our listeners grow and we can reach more and more subscribers together.
Story number 3.
Have you ever been to the hairdressers and not liked the outcome? That reminds me, I really need to go get a haircut actually. Well, what do you do if you don't like the haircut? I bet you do nothing. In fact, I bet you tell them that little white lie that says, yeah, it looks really good, thank you, yeah, I like it, yeah. Well, what's the alternative? One woman this week tried to find an alternative because she wasn't happy with her hairdo. However, she perhaps took it a little bit too far. A video has been posted online of a South Asian salon. In the video, a woman can be seen in a black top and pink shorts. But in her hand is a sledgehammer. She then starts smashing the mirrors up and all the surfaces. Obviously, chaos breaks out and people are running around everywhere. Staff try to plead with the woman to stop, but she's on a one-woman mission to make a statement. Eventually, they manage to wrestle the hammer off the lady, and some normality is restored. The video has now had over 49,000 views, with lots of people sympathising with the lady. I guess these are the people that come out with the little white lies. Other comments, however, claim the video is actually a setup, as someone happens to be filming when the woman comes into the salon. Go and check it out and see what you think, and let us know.
Story number 4.
A man in his 80s this week decided to go fishing at a lake in Warwickshire, here in the UK. However, things didn't go too smoothly for him. But nothing can faze Mr. Laidback pensioner, can it? When driving to the lake, the man somehow managed to drive his car into the lake itself. But instead of panicking, he sat and waited to be rescued, as the car wasn't sinking, as the lake was fairly shallow. But what do you do when you're waiting in a car filled with water in the middle of a pond? Well, you sit back and you light your pipe, obviously. A nearby farmer saw the car, so waded out to the car wearing his waders to find the man sitting there in a fairly chirpy mood. And they actually ended up having a chat. The farmer called the fire and rescue service, and while they were on their way, the two just got to know each other. The man was later carried from the vehicle to dry land, and the car towed out. But how would you act in this situation? Would you be as calm and collected? Get in touch with some of your views. And there we go. That's this week's 4 news stories. If you've enjoyed them, get in contact with the show and let us know, or if you have any comments too. Send an email to
thisweeksweirdnews@gmail.com.
or check out all our social media pages where you can get interactive with the show, and we'll try and share some more weird stories with you during the week.
Comment on Facebook at facebook.com/thisweeksweirdnews or on Twitter @weeksweirdnews.
Or you can start at our website where you'll find links to all our social medias, our emails, and you can do loads more. To do this, go to
www.thisweeksweirdnews.com.
This section of the show is where we do TWWN music.
TWWN music.
However, this week, we don't have any artists to share with you. So, if you're sat out there and you're an artist or a band, and you've been thinking, maybe I could be featured, well, yes, you can. Get in contact with the show, drop us an email at thisweeksweirdnews@gmail.com, and we can get you on next week's show and feature your new track and share some links with the public. So thank you for listening this week, and we'll be back next week with more weird and wonderful news from around the world, and hopefully some more music. Have a good week, and goodbye.
Join us next time for more weird and wonderful news from around the world. Only on This Week's Weird News. Goodbye.